Hello, my name is Derek Atkins, and this is Saints and Sinners, where we dive into the Bible to see what God has to say to us in today's world. Today, I'm starting a new series on the Gospel of John. In this series, we'll go through the Gospel of John to see what we can learn about who Jesus is, what he did, why Jesus came into our world, and why Jesus's life is so important. My prayer is that through this series, you'll learn more about who Jesus is and what he did. If you're already a follower of Jesus, then my hope and prayer is that this series will help you to have a closer walk with Jesus. And if you're not yet a follower of Jesus, my prayer is that as you go through this series, you will give serious consideration to following him. Let's begin our study of the Gospel of John by asking some key background questions. Who wrote the Gospel of John? When was the Gospel of John written? Why is this book called a gospel? And why was the Gospel of John written? So let's go take these questions one at a time. So the first question is, who wrote the Gospel of John? Although the author of the Gospel of John doesn't give us his name, Christians since the earliest days of the Christian community have identified John the Apostle as the author of this book. John was one of Jesus's 12 disciples and came from Galilee in northern Israel. He was the son of Zebedee, and he had a brother named James, who also became one of Jesus's 12 disciples. James and John were both fishermen, as was their father. The second question is, when was the Gospel of John written? There is some debate about when the Gospel of John was written. Some say that it was written in the AD 60s before Jerusalem was destroyed in AD 70, while others argue that it was written much later, sometime between AD 85 and 100. There are good arguments for both possibilities, but in John 21:24, John writes, "This is the disciple who testified to these things and who wrote them down. We know that his testimony is true." In this verse, John, the author, is claiming that he was an eyewitness to Jesus's ministry. If John was an eyewitness to Jesus's ministry, then the Gospel of John was written no later than AD 100. So one of the implications of this verse is that the Gospel of John was definitely written sometime during the first century. The third question is, why was this book called a gospel? The word gospel comes from the Greek word euangelion, which means good news. The good news of the Gospel of John is that Jesus is the Son of God who came to die for the sins of the world, and that through faith in Jesus Christ, we can have forgiveness of sins and eternal life. So that's where the term gospel comes from. It comes from this good news that Jesus and later his disciples proclaimed. The gospel as a genre refers to the 4 books that are found at the beginning of the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These 4 books are eyewitness accounts of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. They are included in the Bible because they are based upon eyewitness accounts of Jesus's life. Matthew, Mark, and John were all disciples of Jesus who lived practically 24/7 with Jesus for 3 years. Luke, on the other hand, was a physician who carefully investigated Jesus's life, talking with eyewitnesses so that he could write an accurate and truthful account of Jesus's life, death, and resurrection. Now, the Gospel of John is different from the other Gospels because it doesn't include the same events as the other 3 Gospels. This, by the way, is one of the arguments for a later date for the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John is also written in a different literary style than the other 3 Gospels. In fact, the Gospel of John is characterized by a very sophisticated literary style and contains much theological reflection on the person and work of Jesus. Some find this puzzling, given the fact that John began his life as an uneducated fisherman. However, if John lived a long life, as a late date for the gospel would require, then it's entirely possible that John could have experienced significant intellectual growth throughout his life. His long life would also have given him much time to reflect on Jesus's life and work. Furthermore, we must not forget that the Jewish religion requires children to be educated, which means the Jewish community had a religious mandate to teach Jewish children, and especially boys, how to read and even how to write so that they would be able to read from the Hebrew scriptures during synagogue worship services. So now we come to the question, why was the Gospel of John written? In John 20:31, we read these words, "But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have eternal life in his name." This verse tells us why John wrote this gospel. John wrote this gospel to encourage his readers to believe in Jesus' name so that they could have eternal life through the forgiveness of their sins. Elsewhere in the Bible, Paul writes in Romans 10, verses 9 to 10, that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you confess and are saved. This is the core message of the gospel. Indeed, this is the central message of the entire Bible. As someone who was an eyewitness not only to Jesus's life, but also to Jesus's death and resurrection, John experienced Jesus's miraculous life firsthand. And because he saw Jesus in the flesh after Jesus rose from the dead, John was convinced beyond the shadow of a doubt that Jesus was exactly who he said he was, the Son of God. These firsthand experiences changed John's life forever, and he wanted to share the truly good news of Jesus' death and resurrection with the whole world so that many, many other people could also experience the good news and receive eternal life through Jesus Christ. So this is why the Gospel of John was written. So if you want to learn more about who Jesus is and how his life, death, and resurrection can completely transform your life, then I invite you to join me in the coming weeks and months on a journey through the Gospel of John as we read about who Jesus is, what Jesus did, and how his life can change yours forever. If you like this video, please click on the like button. And if you want to receive notifications of future episodes of Saints and Sinners, please click on the subscribe button. And if you want to make any comments or ask any questions, please write in the comment section below. So until next time, thank you for watching and God bless.